This video is sponsored by my free will and incredible drive to not finish this pile of laundry. It's 2026, new year, new me. This year, I'll be completing all of my New Year's resolutions, like going to the gym and, well, actually that's about it. I took a short break to play some new games over the holidays, and after watching a new episode of Fate Strange Fake, I remembered something I said I was going to do in December, which was to write my Arknight's Endfield review. Now I'm finally getting around to it, and oh man, I think I'm gonna catch some heat for this one. But this does need to be said, and after playing multiple CVTs for many hours in total, I've come to the conclusion that Arknight's Endfield is not for everybody, and that's okay. Actually, that's not even just okay, that's probably the best part. I think everyone that's played one has gotten used to the song and dance of gacha games by now. Game gets announced, it's an anime mobile game, the gameplay loop is different from Genshin or Wuthering Waves, and good god, it's dead. It's so dead. It's so fucking dead. Every time a new anime mobile game releases, it's the subject of scrutiny and intensely negative criticism. It's nothing new, it's been happening since the stinkiest gamers figured out how to organize themselves and use their voices to say things that not only nobody wants to hear, but also things that would make any normal person think that they've had one too many drinks, because there's no way they read that correctly. That's not to say all criticism is bad or wrong, because high production value anime mobile games are still relatively new, and most companies are afraid to break the formula that consistently works when they poured $100 million into a game. Many people do have valid criticisms, and, well, the groups that attack every game outright are a minority of people who have just found many ways to be exceptionally loud. Meanwhile, I personally would like to get exceptionally loud with Surtur. But all of that buzz got me thinking. With so many 3D anime mobile games being inspired by Genshin Impact's success, many of them took ideas from it and implemented it in their own way. And I think in some way, many players are really uncomfortable with any sort of change from that formula. And Arknight's Endfield is no different. When I played Arknight's Endfield in the more recent closed beta test, I got to experience the entire thing start to finish. The story, the world, the factory, the character designs and menus, the gacha, the combat, and la critura. Now, I usually don't cover stories in depth for gacha games, but as a YouTuber and self-proclaimed gamer, I'll insert my opinion that nobody asked for right here, and hope I don't get mauled by a pack of rabid dogs. I would argue that the opening story sequence for Endfield was interesting and grabbed my attention, but didn't really hold it the entire time. Maybe it's because I don't have the background of having played the whole Arknight's main story beforehand, but I found the pacing in Endfield's story to be a bit slow in the early and mid-game, despite the presentation of the story being really good. There's a lot of movement from characters and cameras in the dialogue, and everything definitely feels alive. The boss fights also feel challenging and rewarding, so the payoff is decent, but this game is not winning 9 awards at TGA for it. It just felt to me like it took a bit for each plot point to move, so much that I ended up spending a lot of time doing other things around the world. But everything changes when you get to Arknight's China Field. Not only does the story pick up in pace significantly, but the world is also much more interesting. Wuling is easily my favorite rendition of an Eastern-inspired region in a gacha game. The zones are absolutely gorgeous. The world of Arknight's Endfield is actually pretty big, and overall I find it to be very interesting. Every zone looks pretty different, and you'll spend a ton of time running around and exploring them to find nodes like cancer rocks. Since you don't drive cars, you have no need for oil, and the US is no longer heading to your location. Though the exploration feels slower than some of the other competitors, it's treated more as progression than just exploration, because the more time you put into the overworld, the easier time you'll have getting around later. It's also worth noting that it is pretty fun to explore the overworld. Over time, you'll build up an electric network that you can use to power various things like turrets, mining rigs, and zip lines. These are all part of the greater factory system, which I have deemed the Great Filter of Endfield. In Arknight's Endfield, one of your core progression systems is the factory base system, which will allow you to automate the creation of various items. These items are used for things like character gear, giant ibuprofen tablets, batteries, and bombs. One of the best parts of the factory system is how it integrates with character gearing. This game still has all of your normal stamina locked things like character talents, level, ascension, I'm going insane, but gear itself is only based on your production line, and the gear has static stats, meaning that there's no RNG farming for your main 4 gear pieces, and that you can just pick and choose what the best build is for your character. There are some elements of RNG and stamina with essences, which are basically extra stat lines that you can add to weapons, but overall the RNG factor to them is less frustrating, as you can upgrade stats over time by collecting copies and feeding them into the other essences. Imagine artifacts or relics from Genshin or Honkai Star Rail, except instead of you missing crit every single time, you can take a second artifact with crit on it and feed it into the first one to guarantee a crit upgrade. That's how essences work. The RNG on essences feels so minimal in comparison to the other 3D gachas that despite despite it taking stamina, I'm very relieved. After all, when you go to do essences, you can actually choose what stats you want to farm for. And combining that fact with the factory being able to produce static stat gear, yeah, I'll take the factory any day. There are many more uses for factories, but the main thing to know about them is that they are 100% necessary to progress in the game. And I have seen a lot of players unhappy with it. For me personally, I really like the factory system. I think the idea of being able to automate items by being efficient with input and output is really great. And it feels rewarding to see your items hit max stacks, and to be able to trade, sell, or use those items in your day-to-day. It's just my brand of autism. It can definitely get complex, with some automation lines getting very involved. You can always take other players' blueprints though if you really don't want to do the work yourself. I can guarantee there will be entire websites, discords, and more full of blueprints for entire base setups with the most efficient production lines. It's only a matter of time before folks start min-maxing their conveyor belts. The biggest L for the factory though is easily the tutorials. Tutorials are good, but holy f***, these ones take so long and they're so annoying. Usually you can just ignore tutorials if you're battle tested, but in the beta, for some reason, they made it so your account gets XP from them. So to progress quickly, you need to spend a few hours knocking out all of the tutorials. I wish I could say it was worth it, but I very quickly wanted to pull out both my hair and my eyes. Okay, wait, put my eyes back, I need those. If I pulled out my eyes, I wouldn't be able to see the beautiful character designs. Even though I've barely played any original Arknights, I've always said that Arknights has some of the most beautiful, most attractive, most original, most attractive, most cool, most attractive. Arknights is special because all of the characters are furries, but not just dogs and cats, I mean reptiles, owls, and whatever this is. I may not know many things about the Arknights universe, but I'm willing to bet it's popular on Rule 34. Take Fluorite, the 3-star that got famous on Twitter for telling you nuh-uh. Her model looks amazing, and you can even see the water effects on her clothes. Well, you can see that with everyone actually, but I specifically really like looking at her. But as you can probably see here, characters in Endfield have huge personalities, including Ember, who has 2 of them. Even in the menus, characters show off tons about who they are, and the roster is already pretty big. There are 3 rarities of characters, with the playables being 4 stars, 5 stars, and 6-star ratings. The cool thing is that OG Arknights has tons of playable characters, and Endfield is taking a note from their book by making less powerful but niche and usable 4-star units. In fact, one of the 4-star characters, that looks suspiciously like Sweetly, is ridiculously overpowered and very easy to obtain. This approach of having many characters with niche uses is something that I prefer for gachas, and I think it's a great thing for Endfield. Personally, I first saw it in FGO, where players use characters of all sorts of rarities to complete challenge quests, and I've heard that OG Arknights had a similar team comp style. If Endfield continues this approach, then 6-star premium units may have more free-to-play friendly team options, unlike some other gachas that have locked team functionality behind having every premium character in a specific lineup. That's a big if though, because only time over many live service patch cycles will tell us how free-to-play friendly the game is. 3D gachas tend to have a big budget, and I suspect that the Endfield team plans on making it back very quickly. Shit. The gacha rates in Endfield are overcomplicated, and considering we still have a couple days till launch as I'm writing this, I don't think it'd be super fair for me to give a conclusion on how free-to-play friendly Endfield is. I do really like what they're doing with weapons though, where you get weapon currency for pulling on characters, leading to you eventually being able to get best in slot weapons for characters of your choosing, without needing to save extra overworld currency. Also, it feels like there's an absurd amount of weapons in the game, which means there's a lot of options for free-to-play players. And on top of all of that, when you do pulls on character banners, you only get characters, so you'll be able to max out your lower tier characters much faster. But I think the important thing to remember is that this is a gacha game at the end of the day, and its goal is to make the fastest money in the history of gaming. If enough people want me to make a video about free-to-play friendliness in Endfield, I can do that and go over the math behind the gacha there, because based on the beta, it actually is slightly better than other 3D gachas if you're able to control the primal impulse to gamble immediately. For now though, I want to hone in on another factor that turns people away from Endfield. Obviously the gacha is a big one, and I have heard that some folks don't like the way characters look either. But one of the biggest things that I've heard is that some folks don't like the combat of Endfield. And no, I'm not talking about the dodge thing, but you guys should know that they made the dodges easier from previous betas, and it's not like the end of the world or anything, but I do think that was a mistake personally. For those of you who don't know, Arknight's Endfield combat isn't like other open world 3D anime mobile games. Holy shit, that's a long classification. Enfield's combat feels closer to something like Xenoblade to me. It involves having all 4 of your characters on field at the same time, and you operate just one of their basic attack combos and dodges. However, you're simultaneously operating every character's skill and ultimate attacks, attacks, and while that's happening, you can also trigger combo skills by meeting certain criteria. The combo skills are, in my opinion, one of the best parts of Endfield because the more combo synergy a team has, the faster it will play. If combat feels slow, it's because you're not triggering enough combos, and while triggering combos itself is an easy task, setting up the correct team compositions requires reading, which, like me, a majority of Gacha players are not proficient in. Another thing to note about Enfield's combat is that it operates on a timed skill point system. To use any character's skill, you need to consume a certain amount of SP, which is passively gained throughout combat. You can gain additional SP by landing certain skills, triggering character passives, landing the final hit in a combo of basic attacks, or by landing a perfect dodge. Character skills and ultimates still do have timer cooldowns, but SP management is part of the game, which is why it's increasingly important to build your team correctly. The combat in Endfield, though it is quite different from the competition, offers a fresh taste of what combat is like when it's more about the preparation than real-time decision making. It's a more methodical approach that may take less skill to actually play and execute, but more thinking and planning ahead, which works well in my opinion because many of the players interested in Endfield have one thing in common, and it's that they love hot animal women. Sorry, can we do that over? Many of the players interested in Endfield have one thing in common, and it's that they enjoy managing resources, teams, and their factory, which at times is a bit tedious, but it's also rewarding, and again, my brand of autism. Now, something I've noticed is that players in the gacha sphere seem resistant to change and generally unsatisfied with something about every game they play. I'm not immune to that. I find plenty of flaws in every single gacha game I touch. After all, it's hard to make a game perfect when its entire gameplay loop is swiping your credit card, but there's something for someone to enjoy in every gacha game so far. For Wuthering Waves, it's the combat and story progression. For Genshin Impact, it's the world and how it's built. For Honkai Star Rail, it's the style of game and maybe story and world. Actually, I don't really know what's going on over there at the moment. In Arknight's Endfield, players can enjoy seeing Arknight's characters and writing in a 3D open world. Fate fans have been waiting for that for years, but FGO makes too much money for them to put effort into a 3D FGO story game. I would know as the biggest Fate game coper. I even have an FGO arcade machine in my garage. It feels like I see seemingly endless discourse about whether or not every game is worth playing because its combat or story or world or graphics or monetization are not what people expected, and those critiques are usually followed up by opinions on what the developers should or shouldn't do. It's valid to want a game to be better, but better in some aspects is subjective. Some people think that Endfield should be easier for mobile players. Others think the combat should have real-time parries and bosses should fly around the map. Some people think that the factory should be optional or that the characters' eyes look strange on their face. Some people think that the Mayan calendar that predicted the end of the world in 2012 was actually a reference to the creation of gacha games that would slowly rise to power and give birth to the gacha system in Arknight's Endfield, which signals the true end of the world. And some people are normal. But once again, Arknight's Endfield is not for everybody. It's okay for a game to be different. In fact, it's that difference in identity that gives it a reason to exist. Because if every game tried to be Genshin Impact, they wouldn't succeed. If every game had Wuthering Waves combat, they wouldn't stand out. If every game had Jinglu from Honkai Star Rail, actually that'd be kind of based. Unlike many gacha games, Arknight's Endfield is not a cheap copy of any of its predecessors in the gacha space, and the factory, combat, differing gacha system, world, and mechanics are evidence of that. What I hope that you can take away from this video is that even if Arknight's Endfield might not be everything you personally hoped it would be, there is definitely someone out there that will enjoy Arknight's Endfield because it's something that other gacha games are not. Overall, I find Arknight's Endfield to be refreshing and exciting, with systems operating in different ways to the other gachas on the market. The factory will bring in a new audience to gacha games, which is a net negative for humanity, but hey, at least you won't be the only one playing. The combat of Endfield feels very fun, impactful, and involved with proper team building. The resource and factory management of the game gives you the ability to form your own goals and complete your own tasks for your own satisfaction. The world is yours to shape with your production lines, zip lines, stocks, trades, and defenses, allowing you to control how it operates. And personally, one of my favorite parts is how low commitment the game can be once you reach the end game. Because once you're fully automated, it's up to you when you log in. Don't let FOMO and daily login rewards control your life. Those things can suck. All in all, I find Arknight's Endfield to be one of the most promising mobile anime RPGs in a while, and I believe that it will end up as a gacha mainstay for a lot of players around the world. I highly recommend checking out Endfield if you haven't, because I personally think it's a high quality and enjoyable anime mobile game. And remember, if it's not your kind of game, that's totally okay, because there are plenty of others that you might enjoy.